Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me today I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, not too bad, Alex. I'm not too bad. How about yourself?
Yeah, probably about the same. It's been a bit of a weird week for City. I feel we kind of went from one of our best wins, or the best win of the season, to a pretty disappointing sort of typical City performance against Accrington yesterday morning. But I guess we'll start with that Portsmouth game because it was just such a tremendous victory and really followed on from the win last week against Stanley with a 4-0 win against Portsmouth. How did you see this one, and how did you see the performance of the team?
Look, the game against Portsmouth was really impressive. I thought we turned up and we were just ready. They were ready to play. They played with style. They played with intensity. They, moved the ball around really well. And I think the result was just was a well earned result. It was probably beyond what I was expecting, and beyond what I was hoping for. But no, it was great. It was great to watch, and just I think it was sort of one of those games where I think we got helped out a little in a couple of little moments with the rub of the green, I guess. That with Marquise being offside early, because that was very early on, and I think if Portsmouth had scored there, that would have changed the whole complexion of the game.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I think the first goal, Keane Lewis Potter heads it, and it goes off Watmo to
Mm.
go in, I think. So, like a couple of those little things where in other games they haven't gone with us. They were on the night. Not that, and then I'm not trying to say that we were lucky to win. Just those couple of moments went with us and helped us on our way, I think.
Yeah, and look, perfect examples the last game against Portsmouth at the KCOM, where it was almost the complete opposite, where those moments went against us, and Portsmouth got the luck of the green and got the two own goals. So it can't be too often that you get two games between teams in a season where there's four own goals scored, which is pretty remarkable. But I guess it at least pays us back for the misfortune that we got in the first one.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. It's probably even rarer and more hilarious is that they won 2-0 at the KCOM and didn't score either of the goals.
Yeah.
And we've won 4-0 but only scored two of them. So across the two games we've scored four and they've scored two, but it's been like
Yeah.
it's just worked out kind of weird.
And I
But
don't know if you saw that Watmo, who got both of the own goals against us, then got a red card yesterday morning in the Portsmouth game against, I think they were playing Peterborough or someone, I think. Or man, it was, who were they playing? So, yeah, it's not a very good week for poor old Watmo, but pretty fortunate for us. Who they have? No, they had Lincoln, that's right, because they had Lincoln. I knew it was one of the top teams. But yeah, look, I mean, there was no changes to the side from the game against Accrington last week, which was probably the right call. I mean, Coyle kept his spot. I guess we'll sort of talk about Long maybe in a little bit, but it's sort of a tough one, I guess, at the moment. And maybe after this Stanley game, there will be a few changes. But I guess it was tough while we were winning to make any changes. But you look at guys like Emmanuel and Ingram who've served us so well earlier in the season, and you must be sort of thinking what they need to do to get into the side.
yeah, look, I think they've sort of, while the changes have, I guess, for the most part, worked, and obviously in that little poor run we had, McCann's identified a couple of things and made some changes accordingly, and they seem to have worked for the most part. But I think they caught me by surprise because I thought for the most part so far this season, Ingram and Emmanuel had been really, really good, and even in those games that we lost, it would be hard to say that they performed particularly poorly in those games, because even in some of those ones we lost, you see Emmanuel was the one of the ones who was trying to instigate a comeback and pushing and making great attacking moves
Yeah.
and trying to create something. So it was interesting to see how that's all unfolded. But who knows? Maybe it's become a matter of managing loads or things, and maybe
Mm.
there's some minor niggles or something that contributed to their place or them being switched out onto the bench. But um, I don't know. I think, yeah, I feel a bit bad for Ingram because I don't think he's really done that much wrong to have lost his spot. And I thought, when Long came in, well, Ingram only lost because of COVID, didn't he? He went out because he was
Yeah,
one of
that's
the
right.
COVID players, and Long come in since, which I sort of thought it was going to be like some of the others. He'd get his fitness back and a couple of games, and then he'd come back in. But I guess it's a testament to Long being in ready to step in as you want those seconds keepers. And like we said about Ingram at the beginning of the year, he spent all of last season just riding the pine, getting a few cup games here and there. One game or two games at the back end of last season,
Yeah.
I think, after the Wigan
Yeah, I was
demolition.
going to say he came in after the Wigan game. Yeah.
Yeah. So, didn't get a lot of game time, a lot of just, practice games, maybe some under 23s, whatever, and came at the beginning of the season and has been outstanding. And I think that's really good signs in terms of goalkeeping that both of those have, got an opportunity for whatever reason and have both been able to grab those opportunities when they were there. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, before we talk about the Stanley game, which was probably a bit more disappointing, I guess for my MVP votes for the Portsmouth game, I'll probably have to go with Honeyman for the 3 because typical sort of Honeyman performance, and especially because he then contributed with a goal. And I don't think it'll get chalked up as an assist. Maybe it does for the first goal, but was certainly just active all across the pitch, and his set pieces once again really vital in terms of our ability to score goals. I'm kind of going, it's kind of weird in a 4-0 win, but I've got more of a defensive flavour for my votes. I've got Jones for the 2 because I think Jones just week in, week out, since he's come into the side for Burke, has looked tremendous and has really sort of made the spot his own. And we sort of talk about Emmanuel and Coyle duking it out for that right back spot. I think Burke's now got a battle on his hands for that centre back spot because I think Jones has certainly shown that he's really more than capable of filling in that spot. And I would hope that it's sort of his spot until he puts a foot wrong. And then I'll give the one vote to Elder, who's sort of another one going under the radar, but has looked very assured at left back and has been a huge contributor to our style of play and our ability to get up the pitch.
Yeah, look, I think there's some solid shouts. I guess the only thing that probably counts against Jones is that bit of versatility he's got. Because we saw in I think the Accrington game, he moved into centre mid towards the end of the game, and I think because Burke was suspended for Portsmouth, so yes, it was obviously the Accrington game. But look, I'd probably only. I know it's harsh on Jones because he did play well, but I would probably put KLP in there only because he, I think it was mentioned in the commentary, he's the smallest bloke there, and he was constantly popping up. He won about 4 or 5 headers in the box, like created quite a few good opportunities, and was just really busy. And it's been good to see how effervescent, how energetic he's been since his reinstatement to the starting 11.
Yeah, and I guess seeing that 4-0 win coming after the 3-0 win last week, it's very natural to look at it as the effects of KLP coming back into the side, which is, I guess, what makes the Stanley loss yesterday morning so frustrating with the 2-0 defeat. That I think it was our first away blank of the season, and it's really hard to pinpoint what actually went wrong. It seems like one of those games where whether we went one game too many without making significant changes. I think Magennis came in for White as the only change. Whether the players were getting a bit tired, whether there was a bit of complacency because we beat the same opposition 3-0 last week. Hard to put a finger on quite what went wrong in this one, but especially frustrating to not even get on the score sheet.
Yeah, look, it was a weird game, and like chalk and cheese with even the Portsmouth game or even the game last week, as you mentioned, against Accrington, that we won 3-0, the reverse fixture, that just didn't seem like how I said about Portsmouth. They seemed on it and they were there and they were energetic and they were ready for it. They just didn't seem up for it from the beginning. It seemed that while we dominated the reverse against Accrington just had our number yesterday morning. They They pressed us really well consistently throughout the whole 90, put a lot of pressure on us, and which which mostly just stopped our ability for the lovely interplay that we've had seen the last couple of games, working the ball from the backs through the midfield and into the forward line. A lot of that was very ineffective. Apart from there was a couple of counterattacks.
I think Lewis Potter had one where I think he had our only shot on target for the game, where he basically ran from halfway and got through on goal and forced a save, but that seemed to be about it.
Yeah, I think across the whole 90, there was probably about 6 decent passages of build-up play, and I think 2 or 3 of those were counters. Like the Lewis Potter, like a quick break. So not that impressive overall compared to the last couple of games. I mean, the weather and the pitch looked atrocious.
Well, we got a very good view of it. The camera was very close to the pitch.
Yes. There's quite a few comments in the commentary about how one of the smallest grounds, in the league, and it did look small. I think we've got stadiums in Australia that are bigger than that one. So
yeah.
It was, but no, look, I think you can make excuses, but I guess at the end of the day, they weren't on it and they weren't good enough on the day. But it was very wet, and so the ball was skimming around a lot. But then also the pitch was, I don't know, it didn't look great, and it didn't look like anyone was handling it that well. There's quite a few players like just slipping over and things. Just it's just a weird one.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I guess it's a weird one because I think if this was the game last week, if we'd lost to them 2-0 last week, we would have probably still been disappointed. But they were going into that game in a really good run of form, and they were really one of the most dangerous sides in the competition. And we beat them 3-0 and felt very confident after that. So the fact that we've now gone to their ground and lost 2-0 probably dents that confidence a bit. But putting it in the context is that, Stanley are having a great season and they're looking really strong. So I don't think the loss is maybe quite as bad as it comes off. But I suppose after having, gone 7-0 across 2 games without conceding, that's where the frustration comes from, that it can flip so quickly. And McCann was sort of asked after the game about how to explain it. And he just sort of said, we just didn't take our chances. I guess we'll talk more about it in the transfer section, but I guess there is still that talk about needing to get another striker in, and it's kind of crazy because we're one of, if not the top scorers in the division, but we're kind of bemoaning this lack of goals or chances that we're creating.
Yeah, look, I mean, it is. I sort of get the argument for like another out and out striker, but I think. We've seen Keane Lewis Potter can be effective through the middle. We've seen Wilkes can be effective through the middle. You've got Magennis, who's, I think, on 9 goals for the season.
I think he's almost a career best,
yeah.
I think it'll be the first time he hits double figures in a while, I think they were saying.
Yeah. So, plenty of guys who are, doing really well. Gavin White has looked pretty impressive since he's arrived. Been energetic, I think an assist and a goal already, so something like that. So I don't know if it's actually as dire as it appears, and to say that our attacking stocks need reinforcement because we blanked on this last game but we scored 7 in the 2 before. I feel like what's happening is it's been talked about, but like the expectation that's been building on where we should finish, and even within our Facebook chat that we've got, is just sometimes we get people getting carried away and saying, oh well, we need to be first and we should be blitzing this division and yada yada yada,
talking about how many points we need to be to get to 100 points and stuff. Guilty.
But I think at the end of the day, or even this battle that we've sort of got with Lincoln at the moment, and going, oh well, we need to win this, and oh no, they've won and this, but we're still sitting in the automatic spot at the moment. Whether we come first or second, we've got 1 to 6 is a very acceptable finish to the season in my eyes, considering how last season finished.
That is the thing. That is the thing.
An expectation, our performances have certainly warranted a rise in the expectation of where we should finish. But I think 24 games played, I don't know if we necessarily have to be in first position the whole way through the league. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Whether we're first for 46 games or we're first for one, it's going to make no difference. It's like if we're first for the 46th game,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I think if we can stay pretty consistent, which I think we have really. There's been a couple of little blips, but they haven't really lasted for too long. And even like through the December, January, that looked and seemed like it was going to be really damaging. Not really, when you take things into consideration. The game that we just lost against Accrington, and Lincoln's won. That would have kept us equal going into our match with them next week. I think something soon.
We play them in the trophy soon. I actually have a look when we play
Yeah,
them.
I think soon. I think it's after. It's like we've got same as Accrington. We play them like twice in a week or something stupid.
Yeah, right.
I think it's Swindon and then Lincoln in the league, but Lincoln in the cup is in the middle.
Yeah, and so it's Swindon, then Lincoln in the cup, then Burton in the league, and then it's Lincoln.
Okay. Yeah, so they're really
like
close together.
10 days time, sort of thing.
Yeah. So, look, I think like at the end of the day, we're close enough. We're still. I think that the battle at the top is really interesting. It's in seeing how that all unfolds, because we're saying, oh well, we've had this dip in form, but by all accounts, Lincoln could very well, in another couple of games, another month, it could be start this weekend, could have their own dip in form, could go 3 games without a win, or only pick up 3 points across, a couple of games or whatever. Like, so.
Yeah, it's very easy to think that the teams that you're racing against are going to go perfect, and that if we don't go perfect, it's sort of, skies falling in. And it's easy to forget that, every other side will have their own blips in form as well. You look at your Portsmouths, you look at your Peterborough. I think Lincoln's already had a little bit of a dip earlier as well. So it does happen, and you're not going to win every single game. I'll give my 3 votes for this one, because then we can keep talking about this with the context of transfers and McCann himself. But I went with Coyle for the 3 in this one, because I thought he was quite dynamic from right back, and I thought he had one of his better games for us. And then I've just gone the easy option for Honeyman for 2 again, because I thought he was quite strong up until the injury. And then KLP for the 1 vote, because as we were sort of saying, he kind of created our few big chances in this game. But yeah, they were really the only standouts for me.
Yeah, look, I don't think I could argue with those selections on this one. There really wasn't. Everyone was pretty flat. There wasn't anyone who really stood out head and shoulders above. So, but those are pretty good shots. They were at least tried to do something and did their job. So
definitely. Well, yeah. We'll talk more now then about, because we're sort of going to talk about the transfer rumors and potential for a new striker. We've already sort of started discussing it, and it sort of feeds into this bigger point as well, talking about McCann. And I guess while KLP wasn't in the side, there was a lot of talk of getting rid of McCann, and then we won those 2 games, 3-0 and 4-0, and everyone suddenly kind of went, well, he's not so bad, we can kind of make do. And now we've lost 2-0 to Stanley, and everyone's gone back to the, well, he has no plan B, we've got to get rid of him. And it's very, very reactionary game after game. And I mean, it's funny, because we're sort of saying with this talk about the striker, that it almost seems like the club's becoming a bit reactionary too, or McCann's becoming a bit reactionary too, that we go 1 game without scoring and suddenly he's talking about needing to bring in a striker again, or at least there's talk about needing to bring a striker in again. But I guess where do you stand on McCann, and where do you stand on, I guess you've already been saying a little bit about our form and not needing to panic too much. Do you still take a step back and look at the club and sort of say, look, McCann is still kind of steering us in the right direction?
I think for the majority, or for the most part, yeah, look, McCann's, he said that he was targeting promotion this season, and he's in that, but he's in that position. So I think it would be hard. It'd be pretty harsh to sack him at this point in the season when we're sitting second. I think we've just about got the most goals scored in the division. I think our defense is pretty strong overall as well. It's up there with, I think it's in the top 3 or 4 at least.
Yeah.
So look, when you look at by the numbers and that sort of stuff, take out all the emotion out of it. I think it's fine. There's no real reason to make a change in that regard. I guess on the striker thing, I guess the only thing is what was the diagnosis with Eves and his
I was going to
ankle
ask
again?
I think they were saying he's out till March.
Yeah, right. So he's done his ligaments again or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That was the only thing, because I guess like without that, then maybe you go, yeah, you could. But I guess like the other thing is, what are you going to like at this time? We got like, what have we got? 3 or 4 days left of January. You know, in January inflation at its best, and then we're right at the pointy end of the window. So, are you going to get value for money on a striker, especially if I guess maybe you're trying to grab another loan? How many loan spots can we have?
It's a good question. I can't remember the exact number. I think there's some limit in the match day squad versus the actual number you can have, which is different. Because I guess, like you said, I think a loan would be the only logical option, because if you're buying a striker to bring them in on League One wages to begin with, and then be expecting them to make that step up to the Championship, it could be a very costly gamble if you're bringing in someone for essentially 6 months. You may as well turn to the loans, but I don't know who's available.
Yeah, look, I think if you were trying to buy someone, you'd be trying to poach, one of the better strikers, I guess, from the league, who's not going to command huge wages, but then they're going to put they're going to be a premium. You're not going to prize, those high quality strikers, even from League One opposition. They'll be able to just pretty much put whatever price they want on at this stage, obviously depending on contract situations and things. But I think loan, but then and then again, who's available? Because we've certainly signed some players on loans and things before that. It seemed like just because there was someone available who fit the position. There was that guy that we got a couple of years ago. Might have been a defender, and he came from. I think he got released from his contract in the US, or his last contract had been in the US.
Ridgewell.
Yeah, and that's right, Liam Ridgewell, and he came in and did absolutely nothing. And it just was like it was so left field. We didn't even know, and it just came out of nowhere, and then still needed to get fit and all sorts of weird.
And it was things. Right. It was right when we were challenging for the playoffs, and Adkins was saying, "Oh yeah, we've been talking to the owners, and we're going to make a few signings." And I think was that when we brought in Mark Pugh as well? We brought in Pugh, who looked okay.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
And then we brought in Ridgewell, and I was like, he just didn't add anything.
Yeah, that I think, and I'm not even sure. Ridgewell might have even been off contract, just a free transfer, so he might have even been later. He might not have even been in the window.
Yeah, right.
Because I remember it seemed really late.
He only stayed for 6 months, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So anyway, point being, you don't want to make another Ridgewell signing. Like making a signing just to add a body into the squad. I think we have enough options within those forward players. And I mean, when you even get to you look at we haven't even seen Jordan Flores.
I was about to say, yeah.
So, there's players there. Chadwick's come back into and been on the bench and got a couple of cameos late. So, I think we really have enough that we don't desperately need to charge out and get another striker. Next year, yeah, I'd say absolutely in the coming off season, a priority would be to be trying to find another high quality striker. As much as I like Tom Eves, his return at the club has been well below par. And I thought this year, he'd come back down to the level that he was so successful at previously, and he'd start, and he'd get a few and get his confidence back up, and then we'd be good. But just hasn't sort of happened for him. And I think he's just another one of those unfortunate players that's come here, and it just sort of hasn't fallen his way while he's been at the club. I think he tries really hard, and he's had a good goal scoring record, just can't quite put it all together for us, which is unfortunate. But I mean, there's still time. He might come back in and get in and score a few and finish the season on fire. Who knows? Which may change the conversation entirely.
Well, exactly. I think it'll be interesting to see how he is when he comes back into the side. I think certainly if we were to get promoted, I'd almost say that a striker is the only thing that we would need to strengthen next season, because looking at our squad from last season compared to this, I think we're stronger in almost every position. And in those positions where we haven't necessarily strengthened player-wise, the players that we have developed into better players, like Honeyman, Lewis Potter, Wilkes. So I think a striker is really almost the only position we would need to strengthen next season if we were to sort of try and take that next step. And I think you're right. I think it's one of those positions where you'd almost do wait till the summer and just try and get through with what we've got. I think we've got enough options. I think with Flores, with Crowley, with the front three that we have of KLP, Wilkes, and White, I think that's dynamic enough. You throw Magennis in there occasionally if you want a big man, especially later in games. I think that was probably the mistake against Stanley, was thinking that because Magennis scored late in that game against Portsmouth, that he should be thrown in from the start. And I think part of our success has been that dynamic front three that can sort of rotate around and throw defenders off. By having Magennis up there, it sort of straightened us up a bit too much. And I think that just made it a bit easier to defend against us, and was sort of our undoing. I think if someone like, if White had needed a rest, I think you play Meyer or you play Samuelson, who, yes, he's got a bit of interest, but you play someone like that where it's still that sort of, or Crowley, throw Crowley up top. One of those smaller, more skillful players to sort of still fit with that front three.
I guess. Yeah, I'm wondering, did Magennis start against Accrington in the reverse?
No, I don't think he did, because the Portsmouth lineup was unchanged from the first Accrington game.
So that's right. I was wondering whether it had been like he'd started in that and they went back to that 11 or something. But
right.
No, I don't know. It's a weird one, but look, I think I don't even know where we were. We were talking about that, and then we're talking need for strikers. Yeah, look, I think the thing will be just like the contract, but I think we've actually set ourselves up really well for whatever happens next year as well. We've got those couple of loan players there, which by all of some, I assume, have the option to buy. So you get to the end of the season with, say, Gavin White, and if we go up, you go, sure, let's take that option, keep him there, keep him in the squad. He builds some confidence, builds some form, builds some rapport. At this level, you go up, perhaps he's able to carry on, at the next level. You deal with Jones, who I think he's only on the weird 1 year thing for this season.
Yeah. It's like a permanent deal, but it's a 1 year, so it's essentially a loan. Yeah.
Yeah. Which he'd be one I'd be absolutely trying to lock up for next season. Who else is there that's on?
Crowley, I guess, as well. I think the weird one with Crowley is I think we've got the option to buy, but I think he's out of contract at the end of this season anyway. So it's like if we didn't take the option, I don't know how that works, because maybe it just means we've got first right. We can sign him up before he becomes a free agent or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but he's actually looked quite decent, quite really good on the ball, and really especially now with Honeyman got injured. We actually have that ready-made replacement of that guy who can fill that number 10, energetic, technical. So he's looked dangerous, played some really nice balls. So he's another one that I wasn't sure about, but he's impressed me so far. So another one who would absolutely you'd be looking just to try and lock up heading into next season, especially if we're getting promoted. I think the only maybe in the back line. It's like, I don't know why we're talking about next season so at this point really, but just while we're on it, maybe in the back line you'd maybe want to add a bit of another player there for depth, but you
look at you got Burke, Greaves.
But I think another loan, a loan centre back from it would probably be would be a good option, just to bring in someone, another
bring in a Premier League player or something.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're going up, yeah.
But anyway, that's a discussion for another 4 or 5 months' time.
Yeah. No, definitely. But look, in terms of players that we do have, we'll talk about our player of the week this week, which is, I think it's lucky last. I think it's the last of our permanent players from the start of this season, which is Matt Ingram, or I should say permanent players from last season who've carried into this season, which is Matt Ingram. We did, of course, make a few signings that we haven't yet talked about. Signed in June of 2019 now, so what's that, 2 years ago now, or 18 months ago now, from QPR. It was a pretty sort of low-key signing when he came in. I don't think there was a whole lot expected of him. He was just sort of brought in as depth for Long, I guess, and to give him a senior body to compete with. And you always hear from keepers when they come in as essentially as a second keeper, saying that they're going to be fighting for their first team place and so on. And doesn't always necessarily mean a whole lot, because you just expect that the incumbent's going to stay in the team. But we've already sort of mentioned the fact that after that Wigan game, he came into the side in the championship, looked reasonable. I think I'd seen some stat about the number of goals that he'd conceded last time he was starting in the league, which kind of concerned me, but he looked very reasonable in the championship. And then, as we said, he then took the preseason basically as the number one, and started the season as the number one. And we went on that run of not conceding a goal for the first 4 or 5 games or whatever it was. And so, yeah, he's got 8 clean sheets this season from 19 appearances, which is a great return. And was just unfortunate, I guess, with COVID, that sort of forced his rotation from the side. And is probably now looking to regain his place. So what have you made of, I guess, Ingram's time at City so far? And I guess then the question becomes, I mean, I think it was the second goal against Stanley where Long was beaten at his near post, where there are those questions that Long still might not be the best option in goal for us, and whether Ingram regains his place.
Look, I think overall, Ingram's probably been, you'd say he's been a successful signing. I think he's had to bide his time, obviously, as we sort of mentioned earlier. But since he has come in, especially this season, he's been really impressive. I think him and Long are fairly different sorts of keepers. I think Long has some strengths that are different from Ingram's. I think Ingram commands his box really well. I think his distribution is actually a little bit better than Long's. I think perhaps maybe just in the reflex stuff. I think Long pulls some spectacular saves in those top corners and things. But I mean, Ingram's had some pretty impressive. Would have a good highlight reel from this season so far, anyway, as well. But look, I think I don't know. I feel like I sort of said earlier, I think he's hard done by to lose his spot. And I don't know, I guess, but then Long's made a mistake or, hasn't protected his near post well enough. Are we then just being, do we want to be that reactionary sort of a manager, or have that reactionary thing where you go, well, you made that mistake this game and then Ingram comes in, and then is it only until Ingram makes a mistake that Long comes back in, and then we're chopping and changing keepers all the time? Because that's not helpful for anyone. You want to be able to have that relationship between your keeper and your back line really strong. So I guess there's arguments for and against. I think Ingram should come back in, personally. I think, I don't know, Long's had some good moments, but I think he sort of just seems to be a bit hit and miss. But
it's a tough one, because I think if it's any other position on the pitch, it's a lot easier to, whether it's Emmanuel or whether it's, I guess White coming in on that wide position. I guess for him it was a bit easier because the Delican left. But in those sorts of positions, it's a lot easier to say, oh, well, you're a bit tired, you need a rest, we'll bring someone in, and then that player just kind of gets the run of form. You look at Jones coming in for Burke. For keepers, it's a lot tougher to sort of justify, as you're saying, and I do agree, it's a lot tougher to justify dropping a keeper. And I guess my comments on Long are more, it's more just looking for that excuse to say, okay, well, you've had your little run while Ingram was out with COVID. Now Ingram can come back into the side, and it doesn't feel like Long's just being, thrown aside. It's almost like you kind of have to look for a reason to drop him, and it's incredibly harsh. And I think as you're saying, I think they both have decent strengths, and it's hard to sort of pick which keeper on their day will play better. I think. Was it Ingram who was in goal was it the Fleetwood game in the Trophy? I think he was in goal and wasn't great for I think it was the first goal wasn't great. And I think that was Ingram. So that they both had a few different issues. Maybe Ingram goes in goal, maybe Long keeps his place for Swindon, and then Ingram goes in goal for Lincoln in the Trophy. And then we see where we're at after those 2 games. But yeah, look, I think as we sort of started by saying, I think he's been great value for what we presumably paid for him. I think he's more than proved his worth.
Yeah, look, I think, and the other thing was like I remember when we signed him, and there was some people being like just looking at forums and things, and there was a bunch of people who were saying like that he was a dud and he was no good, and this was his record. But I actually do remember quite a few. I don't know
He's
whether it was
actually quite a
QPR
promising
or
kid,
was it somewhat, yeah,
yeah.
maybe where he was before QPR or something. Can't remember, but I remember people being like, "Oh no, he's actually a really decent keeper. He's just been like unlucky, like he had a shit backline in front of him or something. I
Mm.
can't remember." But they said like, "No, he'll be really good," and I think he has.
Well,
So
because he was with Wickham and he was the highest ranked goalkeeper in League Two when he was there in 14-15, and then signed for QPR in January 2016 as I guess sort of like a speculative signing because he was a really promising keeper. And I from memory, I do think he played a bit for QPR, and then just kind of got it. Well, actually looking at it, he only played 10 games for QPR, but I think just got a bit unlucky with form and with other keepers who got brought in. And that's how he sort of found his way to us.
yeah, well, I guess that's like the thing that happens because we're talking about keepers, and I was thinking about when we had McGregor, and we went through quite a couple of second keepers, and there
Well,
was
we had a period with was it McGregor, Marshall, and Jakubovic, and
yeah,
McGregor went out
and
injured.
who else did we put? There was that
Oh,
Dusan,
Dusan Tadic, yeah.
yeah, who came in, was a decent keeper from somewhere else and came in and never got a shot,
Didn't even
basically.
get a minute, I think. Yeah,
So, like it
I
can
remember
happen, and I think
he,
like
he came in and he was all excited because I think we'd signed him in the January that we went up with Bruce the second time, and he's excited because he's going to get to play in the Premier League. And then he left like the next January. He was really upset because he hadn't played it all. It was a bit unfortunate.
yeah, but I think like that's just how it can go with keepers. Like a keeper leaves and you got to get someone, so they come in, and then you know I mean, I guess it's
Or
the
for
same with
keeper
almost
injury.
most positions. A manager will have their opinions, and even though they bring you in, they want you there. They've obviously, that incumbent still got the preference and those sorts of things, and unless it's that incumbent that leaves, and then it sort of becomes up in the air. But I think overall he's done really well, especially to force his way past Long and get into that number one spot where when he first signed, it was pretty clear really who was the number one. Now it's sort of flipped the other way, or it's a pretty even battle. So I think he's done really well to force his way into contention so far, and I think you're right. Within the next few games, I'd hope that he's back in that number one. Just got to find a way to let Long down gently, I think.
Well, we'll see if it is against Swindon, who are our next opponents. I was looking at their manager and looking at his stats, and then remembering that we have played them already back in October. It was the 2-1 loss where Lewis Potter scored that worldie of a goal, and then we went down 2-1 after that. Their manager's John Sheridan, who's actually it must be a very rare honour, having been in charge of 4 different clubs during 2020, because I think he was at 2 clubs in League One in the first half of the year, and then joined Wigan at the start of this season, and was only there for about a month before moving to Swindon. So I can't think of many managers that would go between 4 different clubs in a single season, but or calendar year, I should say. But it doesn't look like it's done them much good because they've only got 1 win in their last 5 games coming into this one against us. So it looks like the perfect opportunity for us to bounce back from the loss to Stanley. I guess the main question would be what change. I mean, we've talked a lot about the goalkeeper already, but what other changes would you see potentially being made for the side?
I think probably going back to that KLP, Wilkes, and White starting front 3. That seemed to be really effective against Accrington and Portsmouth. So I see no reason that you wouldn't just go back to that after it didn't really work. I sort of feel bad for Magennis because he's been really good for a lot of the time, for a lot of season, especially even some of those games, that he started quite a lot of games and played really well. But I think just the way that we went about those 2 games in particular to score 7 and be so dominant and so devastating and so damaging. I think if you set up like that and you play that way, I think it actually lends really well to Magennis coming on late, and
Yeah,
then
exactly.
and you've spent 70 minutes setting them up to and they've been working out how to defend against this really dynamic play, and then you go, okay, well now we're just going to have this more direct approach, or like a bigger body in the middle and throw them off again, and it's he's come on and he came on even recently. He came on and scored a penalty with the first.
It was against Stanley.
Was that the okay?
Yeah.
And then
that was the red card, I think, and then he scored the penalty.
Oh yeah, and then come on and got a goal.
Yeah, like last minute goal against Portsmouth as well.
Yeah, so
and even to be fair, he was pretty unlucky against Accrington in the second game that he had that great header ruled out for offside. So it's not that he didn't have chances. I think it's just I think we're creating more chances. We're more dynamic when we're having that front three of Wilkes, White, and KLP.
Yeah, and I guess Crowley's obviously probably coming in for Honeyman. Yeah. Hopefully that's not too serious. I haven't actually heard much so far on that front, but it didn't look like much beyond just a contact sort of a thing. But I mean, you never know. Sometimes they look like not much, and then it's a torn ACL or something. Touch wood that that's not the case, but he did look very uncomfortable. He's rolling around and limped off pretty heavily with support from the physio. So, probably they'd be my only real changes. I'd leave it with Jones and Greaves in the back line. It kind of didn't work. It sort of worked okay to be able to go, okay, Burke, you can have 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the game and we'll just push Jones up. And that sort of keeps everyone happy in that regard. Yeah. But no, I think Jones and Greaves have been working really well.
Coil it right back still?
I'd be happy unless he's pulled up sore or tired or whatever. I see no reason to change in that spot. He's actually been quite involved in the attacking play as well. I think he actually got another shot on maybe not on target, but he had he's blasted another couple of shots and got up into those positions. So
yeah, well, looking at the news. Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, looking at the news, it looks like we don't have any news on Honeyman yet. I think they're just sort of looking to see how it is over the next few days. So maybe before the weekend, we'll know a little bit more about the seriousness of that. But it's sounding like it's more of a shin injury than a knee injury. Yeah. So hopefully, it's just a.
Yeah, it looked like he went through, and I think they it was a wild swing of a challenge or something, and it just got a bit of he just got not clipped, he just got clattered into, I think, pretty heavily in that in the legs. So hopefully it's not just a contact, and he maybe he's hobbling around for a couple of days with a sore leg and it's not too serious. That'd be ideal, but I think that'd be the only real change I'd think about. When you talk about their manager having been at 4 clubs, and I was just thinking, lucky he's not a player. With the restrictions of the amount of clubs you can play for in a 12-month period. So, because I remember it was Ben Arthur when he came and then left, and then he wasn't. He signed somewhere else. He joined and he couldn't play for them for a while. So, that just popped into my head as just an amusing thing. But
I'm trying to think. I can't even think of an equivalent. I can't even think of a manager that's been at 3 clubs, let alone 4 in a single year.
I guess in terms of the result, if it goes by anything that's happened so far this season, we'll win this because we lost the reverse.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah.
I was just thinking we lost to Fleetwood, albeit it was the cup reverse, but we lost in the league and then beat them in the cup. Beat Accrington, lost to Accrington, just about everyone that we've played twice.
Portsmouth, yeah.
Just about everyone that we've played twice so far, we've had a win and a loss against. So, we must be due for a win against Swindon.
Yeah, that's a good point on that one. I'll probably say that we're due a win against them as well. I think looking at their form, I think you're right. It's going to depend on our lineup, but you're right. I think if we start with that front 3, and I'd love to see Crowley in from the start. I think he's looked really good. He made sort of some comments when he moved here that he was moving here to get more game time. He didn't want to be sat on the bench. So it's been a bit unfortunate that he's been sat on the bench to start with. But it'll be interesting to see how he goes coming into the side, particularly if he starts playing, quite well. It then becomes another interesting selection dilemma when Honeyman becomes fit again, because you can't leave Honeyman out. But I guess we'll see what happens with that one as well.
I would like to. Hopefully, Flores gets onto the bench and hopefully gets a bit of a run, because I'd like to see him get a bit of game. So
because we saw him in a small cameo against somebody, I think, and then we haven't really seen him since. I can't remember who it was. I thought maybe it was in the trophy or something. I might be thinking of the he did play in the under-23s game. We had that game against Sheffield United in the under-23s where I saw that we had quite a strong lineup and thought we were going to do quite well, and then ended up losing 4-2. So it wasn't quite as exciting as I thought it would be. But it'd be good to see him in the lineup as well. If we don't see him in the league, we might see him in the trophy game that we've got next midweek. We're sort of already talking about the fact that we have Lincoln.
Flores came on against Accrington in the first time we played.
Yeah, I thought he might have, when they got the red card, because I knew he threw Crowley on, and I thought we might have put Flores on as well, sort of just to give them a bit of a taste in that one against 10 men. But yeah, Lincoln in the trophy quarterfinal, it starts to get a bit more legitimate when you're up to the quarterfinals and the semifinals. So it starts to feel like, Wembley's not that far away. I kind of say each round that I'm a little skeptical that we'll actually get to the end of this tournament, because I just feel like, any week now they're going to say, well, let's just scrap it and use those weeks to play catch-up games. Although it does seem like less teams are having COVID issues in the last few weeks. It doesn't look as if as many games are getting postponed anymore. So who knows? Maybe it will be okay, and there won't be any more postponements. But knock on wood on that one. How do you view this game? Do you see it as a chance to try and progress in the cup and therefore play a really strong side, or play a bit of cat and mouse with Lincoln since we play them only a week later in the league?
Sure, that's an interesting one. I think when we're at the quarterfinals, so I feel like you may as well have a dig at it, and I feel like we'll probably play our best team. Either Lincoln, they either play their best team as well, and we get to feel it out. It's essentially a free hit against them. We lose, they don't extend a 6-point gap against us or whatever, but we get some information about how they play and how we match up against them, which we can take into the league matchup against them, or or they have an eye on the league and trying to maintain the gap against us, and and they play a weakened side, and then we get an easy through to the next round, or I don't know. But I think we're at the quarterfinals. As you say, it's 3 games. Well, 3 games to win it, essentially. You've got quarterfinals, semis, and then it's the final. So 2 games to make the final. So you may as well go out and have a good crack at it. Take your best team out. Get some of these players, get them amongst the goal-scoring action a bit more, get some confidence in them. I think Crowley actually looks like he's really close to a goal. He's been pretty unlucky to either not be able to get his shot away, or to have a little deflection that's pushed it wide. He's had some really dangerous moments so far, so he's probably due a goal in the next couple of games, I reckon.
And I mean, it's funny, like you say, play our strongest team, but I could still see us playing like Emmanuel and Crowley. If he's not going to play in the league, he'll play in this game, and it's still essentially our strongest side. It's just different personnel, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm just saying. I guess the point I'm trying to make would be that not to play an under-23s field side. I guess to play a competitive side. So because and you look everywhere, even though our best midfield 3 by far has been Doherty, Smallwood, and Honeyman, you could still play Regan Slater, Dan Batty, or Jordan Flores or whatever, or something in this game, and it's still going to be a strong team. So I think we actually have it. We've got quite a lot of depth in I guess pretty much across the park now, that you could play pretty much anyone. Even if you wanted to give Elder a rest, when Fleming came in, and he's played really well, so you could even you could almost
Yeah,
play a fully different 11 and still be really competitive. I guess the only ones that probably wouldn't change would be our centre backs. They're probably the only ones we don't really have a lot of cover for at the moment. So, I think, we'll be fine. We'll play a strong team and get through to the semis and then knock them off in the league and knock them off in the league. And there you go, we're 6 points ahead of them or something.
Well, you've worried me with your talk about the fact that it's always the equal and opposite results. It feels like, however this game goes, the opposite will happen in the league. It almost makes me tempted to say we should throw this game so that we can take them off in the league. But there's always a first in the season where we can get the double over someone, and I guess we've already got the double over Fleetwood in the FA Cup and the EFL Trophy, so we can do that with Lincoln as well.
Yeah, it's fun. Look, you got to buck a trend sometimes, so we'll do it against Lincoln.
Absolutely. So yeah, I probably agree. I'd say we'll try and get through this game as well. I think you're right. Like we'll play a strong side. I think we'll probably still take the opportunity to rest if anyone's particularly tired. So if Coyle's tired or Wilkes or someone like that, we might rotate a little bit, but it'll still be to bring in first team strong players. I'm sure someone like Emmanuel and Ingram, if he hasn't got back in the league, will get their goes as well, just to keep them match fit and motivated and focused. So, I can't see any issues in that sense, and it's going to be a great preview for what should be a really big game in the league in a week's time.
I guess I just was thinking about the backs, and I thought, Burke will probably come back in to start, and you wonder whether maybe was it Andy Smith who played? The last round of the cup? Maybe
I think it was. Yeah.
So maybe he comes back in for another go, and you would then be able to say, because Greaves has played just about every game this season, maybe he's due. I guess we did have those couple of weeks where we didn't have a game, but maybe
throw McLaughlin in or throw Burke back in. Yeah.
So yeah, even that we don't. I forgot about McLaughlin when I was thinking about the depth in the centre backs. So Paul McLaughlin, everyone forgets about McLaughlin. No, I think we'll do really. I think we'll be fine. We'll get have some good games and some good results in the next week.
Sounds like a plan. Well, I'm looking forward to those results, and I'm looking forward to being back next week to talk about them. So, thank you for joining me for this one, Dan.
Not a problem. Anytime.
No worries, and thank you everyone for listening in. Until next time, come on, City.